Good morning, everyone. Welcome again to our Healing Frequencies Open Nichelle Nichols Foundation series. And we have this morning Larry Nemecek and the wonderful Walter Koenig. Thank you both so much for joining us. And before we really get started, I want to again welcome everybody, let you know that we are accepting donations. Please donate to the Nichelle Nichols Foundation. We are looking forward to sending young women, 14 to 18, to space camp next year in Huntsville, Alabama. And your donations will go to that to help us get those girls there. Thank you. And let's start. Welcome, Larry.
Well, welcome to you. I was just sitting, I had the honor of leading the family panel, you and the rest of the family and some friends, when Nichelle had her farewell convention a year and a half ago.
Yes.
And we were up close and personal that weekend. But what's funny, sitting here looking at you through a Zoom box, I can so see the family resemblance with Nichelle in you. It just struck me.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I do remember we had so much fun. It gave me a chance to talk about Nichelle, I think, while she was sitting there. And it was a lot of fun. And I think that was the first time I got to meet you. And of course, Walter, it's been years since I was with you, and probably some of the last times was at the Leo parties that Nichelle would have in her on her estate, back in the day. And those were so much fun.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. So I'm so thrilled. We're going to be radical today and share a frame. We're going to just revolutionize all Zoomdom here for Star Trek. So Walter, it's so good to share a Zoom box with you and have you here this morning.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Believe me.
Well, we're here for Nichelle and for all the good. First of all, I want to say thanks to everybody with the foundation for having me as an advisory board member, and that's one of the reasons I'm especially happy to do things like to help out with moments like this, especially when it's Walter. And I don't go back to 1967 with Star Trek, well, officially, but I've known this gentleman for a few years, and that's why it's a thrill to do this morning. And we're thinking about Nichelle. Why don't we start at the beginning? Do you remember the first time you met her? Because you were the late kid. She was in there from not the pilots, but the production first season, 1966. So she had a year down. She famously almost left the show because who's giving the small kids any roles, and the Martin Luther King story. So she's back. What's your first memory of well, first of all, coming on the show, but how soon did you become aware of Nichelle after you got the part?
Well, almost instantaneously. She was, as I recall, the first person to approach me and say hello. And, for the first 6 or 7 episodes, I wore a woman's hairpiece. And she made funny comments about a bird's nest and was very pleasant. She was just very giving from the very first moment. So I have no negative memories at all. And I'm one who's capable of harboring, some resentment or anger, but not with Nichelle. God bless her. She was just a lovely human being. We got along. I think we got along very, very well.
You were talking about the bird's nest hair, the beetle wig that they had you wear while your hair grew into, Davy Jones length. To be Chekhov. Did she sit when you first came aboard and you had this fond memory of meeting her for the first? Do you remember, was it in the makeup, or was it in trailers, or passing in the halls? Or
no, it was on the soundstage. I mean, I was already in uniform, as was she, and we were all set to shoot a scene. I don't remember anything more specifically than that, other than that she came over and made some comment about where are the birds, to fit in with the hairpiece, the wig.
Did she give you any advice? Not advice on acting, but okay, here's all our local cast of characters on the stage, on the set. Did she have any like, here's how you handle this crew person, or here's when you talk to her, when they're doing your wardrobe, don't talk to Peggy or Sue, or or watch out for Fred over there on.
No,
Nothing
I got
in-house?
nothing like that. No, it was I was superficially accepted by everybody.
Mhm.
It was not a great deal of talk or embracing or anything. It was I was just another actor on the show, and as far as anyone was concerned, I might recur or I might not.
Mhm.
I didn't have a contract, and so we were just all going to see how it worked out. I don't think I was treated very much more differently than a guest star would have been treated,
Right.
and so it was pretty easy, I since being the newest kid on the block, I made sure that wasn't intrusive. I didn't say, "Oh, bye, Bill. By the way, Bill, this is the way you should read this line." I never said that.
Well, at least in the beginning. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
And Nichelle was there in the middle of that nice welcome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was great.
Well, I'm trying to remember some, just if it stirs anything, some scenes. I mean, famously, you had the scene in Tribbles together with
Yeah.
the Tribbles and the bartender, and you had the Gamesters, the fighting arena, the
Yeah.
two of you and Bill. I don't if
That's
there are any
right.
moments through shooting episodes like those that.
God, I wish I could come up with something.
I know it's unfair on a Saturday morning.
Inordinately funny or clever or inspirational, but I was miming my P's and Q's. I was just being, an actor on a show that everybody sort of knew each other, and I didn't know anybody. So I just, let myself drift into the background and did the work when I was called upon.
Yeah.
The thing that this foundation has prompted me to remember was there was a moment when I think Nichelle and I bonded, and although we never spoke about it again, I think it was really what brought us together as good friends, and that was we were doing a convention. I don't know how far along it was. I really don't remember how far along it was, but we were about to go on stage, and some guy came up with a magazine, and he opened it up to Nichelle and said, "Is this you?" And she wasn't wearing any clothes in the shot.
Okay.
It was an old magazine,
Right,
long before Star Trek. And I was furious that he did that. And I really chewed him up and said, put that freaking thing away and don't ever show it again. And what the hell are you doing showing it in the first place? So I thought that was the end of it. But about 10 minutes later, as I recall, Nichelle came up to me and said, "Thank you." And although we never mentioned it again, I think that moment brought us together.
Yeah. That's just sounding like such a 70s. I'm just thinking that's got to be from the early days.
Yeah, it was. Oh, yeah. It was definitely from the early days.
The early days of conventions. Well, speaking of that, do you, what was and I'm thinking again about you and Nichelle's shared experience, because you both of you weren't neither one of you were in the top 3 billing. And, I mean, there was the pecking order. And you got some I know you were promised some spotlight scenes going into 3rd season for about 5 minutes, which lasted through Spectre of the Gun and a couple others.
I wasn't promised anything. Whatever happened. They were looking for somebody to appeal to the pre-adolescents, And God knows I have run into women in their 60s. Who in their 70s, who said that they had a crush on Chekhov when I came on the show. So that was one. I do remember one other incident. Gene had a party, and he hired Burgess Meredith
Mm-hmm.
to be the host of the party. And I don't remember what the cause was, what the reason. It wasn't on the soundstage. It wasn't at Paramount. But I think most of us were there. It would be very typical if Bill wasn't there, because Bill didn't show up at any of these things. But as part of the entertainment, Nichelle sang and danced.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it was great until the strap on her gown broke.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, so bless her heart, she's a real trooper. She held it in place and continued the dance and the sing until it was over. And I thought that was great. I thought it was just marvelous. She didn't beg off or anything. She just kept on going.
That's her show must go on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trooper. Even just for friends and
Oh
company.
yeah, it was more than friends. It was, we were doing, I don't remember what we were doing it for. But it was
Well, it was something if Gene did he hire Burgess?
Yeah,
Burgess
yeah,
Meredith
yeah,
was probably now most famously was the Penguin on the 60s Batman, but illustrious actor from a long career.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, she trooped right along. I was just curious if especially like when the show was canceled and you all were hearing about it. I mean, you all were at the bottom of the pecking order as far as the regulars. If there was any, as the third season went along and it looked like there wouldn't be a pickup, and if you all had any shared moments, just dealing with, and that's showbiz. I mean, shows come and go, sometimes longer, but everything eventually ends. I didn't know if.
Well, what I do remember is between the second and third season, there was an enormous amount of talk about whether we were going to picked up, and Nichelle wasn't involved, but George, Jimmy, and I were doing a shoot for a magazine, at one of those teeny bopper magazines.
I've seen those pictures. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're in the woods, right?
On horses.
On horses in the woods.
I mean,
very Star Trek.
Yeah. Well, that's gilding the lily as far as I'm concerned. Star Trek and horses. My God, you couldn't find a more appealing situation for particularly for young people. And then somebody came up and said to us, your show has been changed from Mondays at 8 p.m. to Fridays at 10 p.m. Now, I had a meeting with Gene between second and third season. I went to his house, and he showed me correspondence he had with Schlosser and Warner, the two guys at NBC, and communications that he had with the people who worked for him, the associate producers, editors, whatever. And all of it, he showed me for the purpose of telling me that I was going to be more involved as Chekhov in the third.
This is what I was referring to earlier.
Yeah,
right.
In the third season. So I'm sitting on my horse, and I hear that we're being switched from 8 p.m. on Monday to 10 p.m. on Friday. And I said, there goes all those parts that Chekhov was going to have. And I was absolutely right, because that's when everybody threw up their hands and said, well, the third season in that terrible time slot will mean the end of our show. And the reason why there were a couple of episodes in the third season that featured Chekhov was because they were written during the second season.
Before that,
right. And they just were left over. And so we shot him in the third, like Spectre of the Gun, which was, I consider the most fun I had on Star Trek in terms of portraying Chekhov. When that happened, the only person who felt that we would continue into a fourth season, and bless his heart, was Jimmy Doohan. Jimmy Doohan felt, no, we're going to go on. But we didn't.
Eternal optimist.
Yeah, the eternal optimist.
Oh. Now I'm thinking, well, that's the famous the Save Star Trek mail campaign did bring it back, and that was why Gene started, I guess, the ball rolling. It's date night. Our audience isn't going to be around 9 o'clock Friday, 10 o'clock Friday.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, mine were either on dates or in bed. You know, they're
Right.
at that hour.
Yeah. If they're either out or they're in bed already.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking, as we're thinking about Nichelle here and your relationship, did you have any, when the word came down that you were canceled, did you all have any, did you have a, did you have a wake? Was there any kind of a, final wrap party that, I mean, I know they used to have like weekly parties, right? At the studio sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. There were.
Just end of a week party, which nobody would object to that anywhere you work.
No,
but
no. And that was pretty much, I think, during the second season, we had those. The only people I communicated with were pretty much DeForest by phone and George. We traded our bits of information that we had procured, through rumor, gossip, whatever. And that's how we kept up to date. I wish I could tell you that Nichelle and I got together and we had 3 beers and but we didn't. I do remember that she was incredibly sweet to my son.
Oh.
My little boy he was 6 or 7 at the time.
When the show went off?
Yeah.
When you were canceled?
We had some parties that Nichelle came to. In fact, I have snapshots where Nichelle is feeding Jean some food, and everybody's in costume. So we had a costume party. We were celebrating.
Not your Star Trek costume.
No.
Real costumes.
Right.
Okay.
We were celebrating the 40s or the 50s or something. I think it was my wife's idea. And everybody showed up except Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Bill never showed up. But Leonard was there with his first wife. And then years later, when we got our second home, not that we had 2 homes at the same time, we didn't, but after we sold the first and purchased the second, he came. Nichelle was always there, bless her heart. And she was the only professional singer among us. And of course, she had a beautiful voice. And we had a party where it was mandated that everybody sing. I remember Leonard's wife coming up to me just a minute after they walked in and said, "Leonard and I do not sing." I said, okay. But Nichelle carried the day because she had such a beautiful voice and was so great. She, George, Jimmy and I teamed up with this promoter, and we did like 7 or 8 conventions together, and that was great fun.
You're talking about the Fab Four or before
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yes.
So this is when Next Generation was on, and I thought there was kind of a feeling out there was, oh well, the original guys, who cares about them? And that Fab Four tour with you all kind of disproved that. It was like, oh no, there's a lot of demand and popularity out here.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was a weird time because Next Generation was the first new Star Trek, so you guys were the original pioneers for all this. But then you were the first ones to watch somebody else's show take over, to go through that yourself.
And they got more money than we did. Right from the start, they got more money than we did. I mean, when I started doing conventions, I did them for Adam Malin and his partner,
and Gary
Berman.
Creation.
Yeah. They paid me $300. And it was a comic book convention. This is before they were into Star Trek. And that was out of New York. So I remember doing a convention with Marina Sirtis, and she was in a very tight, clingy outfit, looked very provocative, but very pretty. And I had a black jacket and a black sweater and a white shirt. And it could very well be that I was a priest. And my sense was that I was following her around, making sure that she didn't do anything that would reflect badly on the Catholic Church.
That was the image, not your intention, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, I was doing some checking. So the famous New York conventions that were the original Star Trek conventions, the committee, Joni Winston's bunch.
They didn't like me.
76. Well, I saw you were there in 74. It was you and Nichelle and Dee and Leonard were the guests. They started in 72, I believe. But anyway, I didn't know if that was your first time convention because it was so new. If you have or do you remember that either that one or just the early conventions and any? You mentioned one time with Nichelle and the rather rude fan.
Yeah,
but,
that was here. That was in.
Oh.
No, I think it was in L.A. I'm not sure, but yeah, the New York conventions.
The original New York, the committee conventions.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. First of all, Joan Winston and her friends didn't like me because I chewed them out. What happened was I had done a convention. I was doing a convention in New York, and one of the guest stars, I think it was Arlene
Martell?
Yeah, well, I knew her as Arlene Sachs because we had been in a theater group together before Star Trek.
We're talking about T'Pring, Spock's, the original T'Pring from all time. Yeah.
She had come into town, and I think coincidentally, at the same time we were doing the convention. And the people in charge just loved the idea that she was there. And they brought her up on stage and had excused me from my presentation to introduce Arlene and let her talk. I was furious. I was freaking furious.
It was an impromptu.
Yeah, just, and I told them, I collected them afterwards, and I said, this is the most unprofessional thing I've ever seen. You don't push me off stage because somebody who was not even announced to be a guest has suddenly arrived. And so they didn't invite me the next year, those folks. And then the huge one, the one that had fans, across the street and down the street and into the park and through the trees. I didn't go to that one because out of principle, because I had done another convention for somebody in New York, and like 2 months earlier, and I didn't feel it was fair to do that. And even though I was invited to come back, I didn't think it was fair to do that, and because I felt that I had an obligation to go to the first one since I accepted. So I missed that huge one. I was the only one that wasn't there. But that's what put Star Trek on the map. That convention. Not only did it have all the other actors, but it had writers and story editors, and it had everybody. And Nichelle was there. I know that she was at that one.
Well, the conventions are going along, and this is the 70s. And part of what struck you all, like nothing like Star Trek had happened, that the downside was putting most of you in a it was hard to break out of that mold once it got so popular. In fact, it even affected Gene. You all were demigods and still having to pay the mortgage and put the kids to college and everything.
Right.
And everybody going on with their careers and all of that. And I'm just wondering, as you're trying embracing Star Trek, but saying, hey guys, I can do other things. I was wondering what you thought when you heard the news that Nichelle was recruiting for NASA, was working with NASA on expanding the astronaut corps.
I thought it was great. We have an obligation in this world to do more than just speak lines. And she was approached, and she embraced the opportunity and did a lot of good. I mean, she got people into the space program, and they went on to perform as astronauts. So whatever the initial reason was, ultimately it was a very good thing, probably of all of us, with the possible exception of Leonard, because Leonard was very much socially aware, very philanthropic, very humanitarian. But she did a great deal to affect society, to affect our culture, and it's something I think we all thought highly of her for doing. That she had embraced this opportunity and did it so well, so effectively.
I was going to say it didn't strike you that it was really Nichelle. I mean, it was a real, like you said, along with Leonard, maybe it was a natural fit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, she was a great person. She was terrific. You know, there are people among our cast.
Well, you should tell them this.
No, I'm not going to. But there are people, you know, who first, foremost, and forever are only involved in their own world, and whatever they do is motivated by how it affects them. And I cannot decline that label. I'm sure there were times when I've done it. I don't know of any particularly offhand, but Nichelle was, you know, was very much always. She always felt the responsibility to the world, and given that opportunity, she seized it. And bless her heart, she was very effective in moving our country forward and our society forward. I've met a few people who were in the astronaut program and who were, you know, were directly affected by Nichelle's involvement, and they had only kind words for her.
Right. Well, it's certainly, I mean, we talk about it in the foundation a lot as part of her legacy, but certainly, I mean, the pioneering days, they were all the sky jockeys. It was all the test pilots.
Yeah.
And you know, but after 15 going on 20 years, and the shuttle was going to be the space truck, and we were supposed to be democratizing space travel. And she went a long way toward making the astronaut corps and what America looked like in space look like America.
Right. Right. It was great.
And was so positioned to do that. Well, you know what? One thing, are we still good with the photos? I think we are. Hopefully we are. Can we show some photos? We found some shots of you. Look at this. Can you? Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the one with the rose. We're not sure about where it was taken, but do you remember this moment?
No.
Well, it's a beautiful moment.
Yeah. I was already PH, post hair. But that's a very authentic movement, because that's the way we felt about each other. You know, we were really good friends.
I'm trying to. Is that her house, or looks like it's somewhere else? Maybe.
I was trying to figure out if that was the house or not. I don't think so. I don't.
Like
really
maybe I was only there a couple of times, but it feels like I don't remember that much glass.
Me neither. Yeah, that was the only thing. It has the feel of it, but But it didn't have that much glass in that great room.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful moment. It is a beautiful. Well, we've got some other photos, but that might evoke YouTube the best of all. What's the second one? And now we know this other one. Do you recognize? Everybody's been laid. LEI.
Yeah. Do you think that might be on a ship?
This is in Hawaii in 2016 at your 80th birthday party.
Oh. 2016?
Or so I am told.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm 86 now.
Yeah. So not so long. Yeah.
I mean, we hung out. We did a convention in New York, which was really kind of peculiar convention. It was a baseball and Star Trek convention.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And it was Nichelle and I were the only two Star Trek people. Phil Rizzuto, who used to play shortstop for the New York Yankees back in the 50s, and I think the 60s, he was there, and a couple of other baseball players. And then we went on we did two cities that weekend. I don't remember what the other one was, but so we hung out together. Our rooms were right next to each other. That was a good time.
Who's your team? Do you have a?
Oh yeah, it's the New York Yankees.
Okay.
I go back to Snuffy Sternweiss, who played second base for the Yankees in the mid to late 40s.
Old Snuffy.
Old Snuffy.
Okay. Well, I'm not the biggest baseball fan, but I gotta give it up to anybody who remembers their favorite players.
Nobody remembers Snuffy Sternweiss but me.
Nobody could remember it like you. Well, so you're on this baseball and Star Trek convention. Do you remember Nichelle's? I don't know if Marion knows or not. This isn't a trivia question. I'm just asking. Did Nichelle have a team?
I don't know.
Was baseball ever a big topic for you?
No, it was not.
Even at the baseball and Star Trek convention.
No.
I'm not surprised. Well, we have another photo,
I'm
right?
trying to think, since we grew up in Chicago, it might have been the Cubs, but you know, I think my dad followed the Cubs, so she might have followed the Cubs.
Linda is a huge Cub fan. Zarukas. Linda.
Right.
Okay, now here's one.
Yeah, this is obviously at a convention, I think.
Yep. It's the green room for Phoenix Fan Fusion in 2019. This, yes. Okay. So this is backstage at Phoenix just a few years ago.
Yeah. Bless her heart. She was great. She'd already started to have some difficulty with memory, but
That's a great picture.
Yeah, she was always so charming that no matter what the circumstances were and whether she remembered who you were or not, she was always had a big smile. It was great.
That's why she was able to get out and meet fans. I mean,
Yeah.
as some of her memory faculties were declared, that never got in the way of greeting people in the moment and giving them a warm feel and a shining little spotlight moment.
She never forgot who her fans were. She never forgot her fans. She loved them and they loved her.
Absolutely.
So that photo is from Phoenix in 2019, which would have been late May around Memorial Day. And then we have this last photo of you two. So this is the last photo we think was of you two together. This was at Creation Vegas that year. So just a couple months later, 2 or 3 months later. Yeah.
She'd always put a smile on my lips. She was just so charming, and I think most of the fans toward the end understood that there were some problems, but they loved her so much that they just ignored the problems and just talked to her. And whether she knew them or understood what they were saying entirely is beside the point. It was just the contact. It was just that one-on-one that she did so beautifully, and which they welcomed and appreciated so much.
Yeah. Well, I'm sitting here thinking of maybe events. So all of you in the cast had got a star on the Walk of Fame and had the event. Nichelle had her part, and usually everybody who was available was in the cast, was among the guests, special guests for everybody. I remember I was at yours a few years ago. Do you have a memory of those kind of days, either for her star or her at yours? Or Leonard was kind of a surprise. His health was in decline at the time, and he made a surprise.
Yeah, I had invited Leonard, and initially he said yes, and then he said no, and I totally understood that. And then at the last moment, as sick as he was, he showed up, and bless his heart that he showed up. I was very touched.
And then got up and said a piece.
Yeah, he talked a little bit about me. Never was close to Leonard because Leonard was never there. It was Mr. Spock who was there. I mean, always it was Mr. Spock. Whereas with Bill, it was just we weren't worth the time. With Leonard, it was I don't deal with Earthlings
or breaking character. No,
yeah. But this is not really the format to talk about another actor. But when there was I noticed that we had a difference. There was a distinct difference in salary between George and Nichelle. George and I were offered one amount of money, and Nichelle was offered another, which was less. And I called, and we were in every other way we were favored nations, in every other way. So I called
Equal treatment,
equal treatment,
favored nations. Yeah.
So I called up Leonard and I said, and this is one of the movies that Leonard was directing. And I told him that this is not equitable. So he called Harv Bennett and he got it changed so that Nichelle got the same money that we got. And I'm very pleased with Leonard for doing that. And curiously, I'm very pleased with Leonard for his position with the animated series.
Right.
I was not cast in the animated series, but originally neither were George and Nichelle. They were trying to hold it down to 4 actors, and Jimmy was going to do all the other male voices, guest voices, and Majel was going to do Nichelle's voice and any other female voices. And Leonard said no, he would not accept that because they were there at the beginning and they helped make Star Trek what it was. I was a second year replacement, and consequently, he didn't feel strongly motivated to push for my appearance as well.
Forever the late kid. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was okay. I mean, it was hugely embarrassing for me, because I found out from a fan at a convention that I wasn't going to be a voice on this animated show. And they just come out of a talk.
And this was 73. This was like conventions that had only been around for a year or two.
Yeah. I came out of a convention that talk that Dorothy had just given.
Dorothy Fontana.
Yeah. Explaining what the situation was, that I wasn't going to be. And, fans saw me outside the room and they asked me, how do you feel about that? And I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know that I wasn't going to be in. So that was really a shock for me. That really upset me. And I tried to discuss it with Gene, and he just wouldn't talk about it.
I mean, they threw you a bone and let you write a script.
Yeah, I had already written the script. So, yeah, and I had requested an opportunity to read for the part of the scientist on the show that I wrote.
This is the Infinite Vulcan.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, you weren't in the cast, but Walter gave us not only a revisit of the eugenics wars, but 50-foot Spock.
50-foot
Clone Spock, right.
And also a plant called the Retlaw plant.
Yes, the Retlaw plant.
Which was Walter backwards. I grew up with a comic book back in the 40s called Planet Comics. And one of the stories each month in Planet Comics was about aliens, and they all talked backwards.
Oh, okay. In comic book form, you're reading the word balloons. Right.
Yeah. And they were all backwards. So it was, it was like homework, oh God, wait a second. I'm Jewish, this should be easy. But the words were backwards, not just the sentences. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know what the hell I was talking about, but just the Retlaw plant. So I'm saying, so our loss with not having you in the animated series was the gain of the 50-foot Spock and Mike McMahon on Lower Decks, who brought it. Speaking of which, and I want to get back around to Nichelle before our hour is up, but I should have started by saying congratulations, President Chekhov. Oh, yeah, well,
because we find out that Pavel's son is the president of the Federation, according to Picard. That just aired. So that was a fun moment and a pleasant surprise for almost everyone because they kept it a great secret.
Yeah, they kept it very secret, and they asked me not to say anything.
You were a good boy, not to spoil any of that.
They came up here, and we recorded it up here. That was fun. I went over to Todd's house. Todd
Stashwick.
Yes, Stashwick.
Who's a neighbor of yours here.
He lives 1 block away. I don't get Paramount.
Captain Shaw for everybody.
Yeah, yes. I don't get Paramount Plus, so I went over there, and Terry,
Metalis.
Yeah, the showrunner was there, and I don't know, 1 or 2 other people, and I got to hear it for the first time at Todd's house. So That was fun.
You all, there's a great shot of you all with popcorn that blew up the internet.
Yeah,
The Star Trek
I
internet.
just saw that. Yeah.
Very good. Well, I have a note here that I mean, Gene and Majel gave parties a lot, and that Nichelle gave parties a lot. And you were talking about Nichelle would usually, whether it was a singing party or not, Nichelle would she often entertain? Was that just expected, or was it like, oh God, there's nobody said, oh, here's Nichelle, she's going to sing again? It sounds like it was always a
that
treat.
was never.
Since she actually could sing, it was a pleasure.
Oh yeah, I think she sang she would sing a song at conventions. You know, she just burst into
just
song.
bust out and sing. Yeah,
it was always great.
And it wasn't. But I mean, that's why, with some notable exceptions, as you said, you all just fell into that about still staying together. I mean, the conventions, I guess, allowed that to happen too. But you all were stating good as we saw there. That's, you don't make that up, that relationship, like those sweet pictures.
That was great. You know, this is sort of bittersweet. At a recent convention, when I mean recent, I'm talking about the last 2 years. Nichelle and I were seated next to each other when we were signing autographs, and the Alzheimer's was pretty evident at this point. And we were elbow to elbow, and she turned and looked at me and said, "Hey, sweetie," and give me a big kiss, you know. And I think, okay. 20 seconds later, "Hey, sweetie." We did this about 5 times until finally I asked the person who was helping me to take my seat, and I would sit a little bit further away. But God bless her, it was always so charming. She was just, you know, through thick and thin, regardless of what she was enduring, she was always such a bright, warm presence. I'm very proud that we were friends.
Yeah. Well, that's what you after you say that, I think of so many folks, unfortunately, and you know, there's medical research. Hopefully we can combat this at the frontier. But with dementias, as you say, so many folks, when they get to that stage, they're cranky and they're mean.
Yeah.
And I, you know, but it's just amazing that so much of Nichelle's brightness and warmth came through, and the fact that she was totally aware of when her fans were out there. Yep. And you sitting next to her signing. Some things were just innate.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And that's what I love and will always remember.
That is not on the schedule, but and maybe I shouldn't even bring this up. I don't know, but I just wanted to clear the air once and for all. There were a couple of people. I imagine were well-meaning, but they did not investigate the situation thoroughly. And word went out that Nichelle's family, particularly her son, were treating her badly. And it got in the news. You know, it's one of those stories that gets in the news. And it was inaccurate. It was wholly inaccurate. The person who was treating her badly was her manager, who was a bad guy. He was a really bad guy. And her son, you tell me if I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong.
Yeah, I'm talking.
Well, time has shown that, but yeah, for a while there, I know a lot of the public and a lot of fandom were confused and wanted to know what was going on. But I mean, we know now, but it was hard to do that when things were.
Yeah.
But you were always in her corner, and you were trying to tell the world.
Absolutely. So I just for anybody who's still carrying around the residual sense that her family was deserted her, or were not in her corner, or not supporting her, it's not true. It just simply isn't true.
Absolutely, it was not true, and it's just so indicative of what's happening in social media today. People get hooked on a tale, and they can't let it go. No matter if the truth is staring you in the face, they are so hooked on this idea or this belief, or because they heard somebody say this or that, and they want to believe the worst. I think it's awful. I think it's terrible that the lines are so drawn in the sand that you can't tell the difference between truth and a lie. And that, unfortunately, for Nichelle's life, and to end her life with this huge, horrible person who took advantage of her, and the people that were out there that just loved to believe the story.
And even third parties trying to horn in and have a part of the controversy. That wasn't even a controversy. That's why I was so thrilled when I heard about the foundation being started. Why I was thrilled to be asked to be on the advisory board with an awful lot of other folks who were helping out. And I'm sure you, and the sad thing was you were wanting to be part of her farewell weekend too.
But
and you gave us a scare, which turned out not to be.
Yeah. I had been in the hospital. I had contracted a bacterial infection. This was about a year and a half before the celebration of Nichelle. And I was quite ill. My temperature had risen to 104. And it took them 5 days to figure out what the heck was wrong with me. Because they kept looking for a virus, and it was a bacterial infection. In any case, I thought it had recurred. And I suspected the symptoms I was having were the same that I had had before. So I made a premature call and went to the hospital the night before Nichelle's celebration, and was there the day that they celebrated her. They celebrated her. So I'm very sorry about that, because I went home shortly after that.
Yeah. Well, we were looking forward to having you that weekend.
And
then I was scared. Oh, what? I can't take this. So I was very glad to hear that it was obviously premature, but we missed you that weekend. Didn't we, Mary? Yes. But that's why it's great that we're doing this series here and thinking. I mean, the foundation is basically trying to project all the different aspects of Nichelle, inclusivity and diversity. And young people and acting, performing, but also communications. Look, this is the international symbol for uhura here. Put your finger on, hold your earpiece in your ear. But all the things that the foundation is trying to do good in the world, and just having different topics and different speakers every month in this.
We encourage people to go onto the website. Please go onto the website and look and see what we are doing, what we are trying to accomplish, and donate. Please donate and share the information. Thank you.
Right. Well, Walter, thank you for any last thought. Is there a story you've always wanted to tell about Nichelle, or you and Nichelle that?
But I can't tell that. Joking.
Not even now.
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't have anything. I don't have anything under wraps that
She loved her parties, and I think, Larry, we went through that when we talked at her celebration about the tales, and I think Walter can probably attest to it, the long drawn out stories that she could tell. She'd have you captivated all the way to the end and then drop the bomb on you, and you'd just sit there going, duh.
Shaggy dog stories, is that what we're talking about? Yeah.
Probably.
Right. Well, I think, what's coming up with you? You're going to be helping the foundation in Phoenix, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm doing an appearance in Phoenix the first weekend in June. And for part of the time, I suppose I'll be sitting at a table that's promoting the foundation. It's for part of the time. And I'm overjoyed to be given that opportunity. Aside from that, I'm 86. Isn't there a thing about being 86th out of town or something?
Yeah.
I think I'm being 86th out of town. I mean,
in the good way.
No, okay. Not in the good way. I'd rather be working, but that notwithstanding, I know the facts of life, and I know that when you get to be 86, you should be grateful that you're still breathing,
And promoted to being president of Earth. But
well,
the
not
Federation.
me, not me, my son.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Your fictional son.
Yeah, my fictional son. I am writing a book. I've been writing it off and on for well over a year. I talked to a interesting fellow who runs a podcast, who's a astrophysicist,
Okay.
and his wife is a professional editor, and I'm definitely going to need an editor for my book. And he volunteered her, so I mean, I'll obviously pay her, but it's nice to know that if I ever do finish the bloody thing, I'll have somebody who can get the red pencil out and cross it all out,
Well, hopefully not too much.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, I think I think this has been, well, it has been a wonderful morning. I don't think anything, I know, but I think our hour's about up. But thanks so much, Walter. And thank you, Marion. It's good to see you even by Zoom again.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been a pleasure to see you both.
Are you in New Mexico?
Say what?
Where are you, Marion?
Oh, no, I'm in Las Vegas. So I'll be attending at the Vegas convention in August.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Well,
hopefully
I'll see you
attending.
then.
And
I said I will see you then.
Absolutely. I'll look forward to it.
And you're a mainstay at Vegas, aren't you, Walter?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I've been there. It's a captive audience. It's Star Trek all the time. And so you've got to really be pretty bad not to be
embraced
in Vegas. Everything Star Trek is wonderful. God forbid I should say anything bad about what's his name, the guy with the blonde hair, Captain something. I can't remember his name.
We're good. We're good. Well, we'll all see you. We'll all be, and I'll.
You do know I know who I'm talking about, right? And you do know who I'm talking about. I just
want to thank you, Walter, for being there. Thank you for all the years that you and Nichelle gave the world. It's just been wonderful, and I hope to see you again in Vegas. And hopefully I'll be able to get to Phoenix and see you there. And Larry, what a pleasure to see and talk to you again, even if it's Zoom, but we'll get to see each other in Las Vegas, and I look forward to it.
And I look forward to helping out and making sure that the foundation lives long and prospers, and do what I can to help that along, and that we and we do the same for Nichelle's legacy and her memory.
Absolutely.
And all the good and light that she put into the world. Right. And shine with.
Did she ever?
And that we have photos to prove it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And thank you. And please donate, fans. Please donate to the Nichelle Nichols Foundation. Thank you all so much. Live long and prosper.
Absolutely. Truck well.